Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us today at the press conference on the Commission's today's proposal on sustainable batteries. I'm very happy to welcome here today Vice President Šefčovič, Commissioner Sinkevičius, and Commissioner Breton. We will first hear the Commissioner's opening statements and then take your questions. Please, Vice President.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I'm really thrilled to stand here today because we are taking another giant leap forward into the greener future. Our proposal on batteries will not only modernize the EU's legislative framework, but once adopted, it will also revolutionize the battery market. First, let me take you back 3 years ago. At that time, the EU battery industry was hardly on the map. Today, though, Europe is a global battery hotspot with some 15 gigafactories emerging across our member states. And by 2025, we should be manufacturing enough battery cells each year to power at least 6 million electric cars. In other words, we are well on track towards strategic autonomy in this increasingly important sector. The global demand for batteries is expecting to see a 14-fold increase by 2030. The EU could account for some 17% of that demand and thus would become the second largest market behind China. But a green, sustainable future, which Europe has signed up to, should be powered by green, sustainable batteries. And this clearly requires a new, future-proof regulatory framework to ensure that only the greenest, best performing and safest batteries make it onto the EU market. To set such a global golden standard has been among the key priorities under the European Battery Alliance, and today we are delivering. In fact, it will help accelerate our own work. All industrial players in Europe will now have a clear, predictable legal environment that supports them in innovating and preparing for the expanded surge in electromobility by 2023. In practice, it means that batteries placed on our market, regardless of their origin, will be sustainable, circular, high-performing, and safe along their entire life cycle. That they will be repurposed, collected, and recycled, becoming a source of valuable secondary raw materials. For this, the proposal establishes specific requirements at each stage of the battery value chain. The new sustainability requirements, in particular, are a real game changer. I will elaborate on 2 of them. First, our proposal introduces progressive requirements to minimize the carbon footprint of a battery over its life cycle. They go from an information requirement in the form of a carbon footprint declaration as of mid-2024 to classification into carbon footprint performance classes as of 2026, and ultimately to maximum life cycle carbon footprint thresholds as of mid-2027. This will promote even further the use of clean energy. Second, we are equally ambitious on the social footprint of batteries. Manufacturers of industrial and EV batteries will have to demonstrate they are sourcing their raw materials ethically, responsibly, and in a transparent way. This is essential as the demand for raw materials is only going to rise, even as Europe finds itself heavily dependent on imported raw materials, including 3 key ingredients in the batteries: cobalt, currently 87% dependent on imports, graphite 98%, and lithium 100%. Therefore, building on the world's best due diligence standards, those of the OECD, we will require compliance through a third-party verification. In a moment, my colleagues, Commissioners Sinkevičius and Breton, will elaborate on other mandatory requirements, and I will just underline that by creating competition certain around sustainability, the regulation will have an immediate impact on a market that until now has largely been driven by price. Time is of an essence, however, and therefore already today I invite Member States and the European Parliament to give their utmost attention to this proposal and adopt it by 2022. By doing so, we can make the most of our first mover advantage, provide legal certainty, and unlock further large-scale investments. Before I hand over to my colleagues, let me emphasize that this proposal comes to you as a result of outstanding collaboration within the Commission, proving yet again that a cross-cutting approach is the right recipe to boost our strategic autonomy in key industrial sectors. Therefore, my thanks go to the Executive Vice President, Frans Timmermans, but also to my two colleagues and friends on the podium, Virginijus and Thierry, and all our teams who've been working very hard to achieve this, what I believe is a very impressive result. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and of course, thank you for tuning in. I will probably take from where Vice President Šefčovič ended. I will first of all say a huge thank you to our teams for that great collaboration, for really huge work to be done and excellent work to be presented today. But also I'm very proud to be on this stage today representing this initiative, because this is exactly what the Green Deal is. It's horizontal across all sectors, but it's also our growth for our industry and opportunities for our future. Most importantly, this growth is powered with the green sustainable batteries. So from my point of view, I would like to start by reiterating that this proposal and batteries in general are essential to the green transition. They are also key to the Commission's zero pollution ambition and, of course, for climate neutrality. With the European Green Deal, we got on the highway to a truly green future, and we need sustainable batteries for this ride. So what we are proposing is forward-looking regulatory framework. It's integrated and inclusive with an eye on sustainability across the whole value chain. It's a proposal that breaks new ground and allows the EU to lead by example. Our proposal on batteries, putting a life cycle approach and circularity at the center of our legislative framework, will be a blueprint that we can use for other value chains as well. And I'm in particular thinking about our future sustainable product policy initiative. So what is a sustainable battery? What does it mean in practice? First of all, it's a battery made of raw materials from a responsible source or from recycling. It's manufacturing using clean energy. It contains minimal amounts of hazardous substances. It's designed for a long life, and at the end of that life, it will be collected and repurposed or recycled. We want to guarantee this through two types of measure in our innovative toolbox. I say innovative because in addition to using tried and tested instruments, we introduce new groundbreaking measures. On one hand, we want all batteries placed on the EU market to meet common requirements, regardless of where they were manufactured. And we propose, for the first time, due diligence, carbon footprint, and mandatory green public procurement requirements. And on the other hand, we want a more circular battery chain. And for that, we want to make producers and other economic operators responsible for the management of end-of-life batteries. The EU scores quite high on recycling portable and automotive batteries, but that's not the case for lithium-based batteries. And we want to change this. The number of lithium batteries available for recycling is projected to increase 700 times in the next 20 years. And this will be a huge challenge, but also an opportunity. We see that the prices of lithium have doubled over the recent years. And we want to recover higher amounts of lithium and also of cobalt, copper, and lead, and to boost the demand for recycled materials and their quality through recycled content targets. The EU recycling industry already has that potential, and the Commission is convinced that the targets in these proposals are a push for further innovation. We are also clarifying the situation on second life batteries, removing barriers to repurposing and remanufacturing with the necessary safeguards. When you put these elements together, you have a robust, modern, harmonized framework. It will bring stability and legal certainty, which are both key ingredients for greater sustainability. This is vital for economic operators across the whole battery value chain, and it will open the way for the large-scale investments we need to respond to market demand. There are huge changes ahead. An explosion in the size of batteries market. What we propose will enable that change and ensure its sustainability in the long term. Thank you very much, Vice President Šefčovič, for passing me a word. Now, with a great privilege, I will pass a floor on to Commissioner Breton, who will certainly tell you much more about the importance of this proposal for our European industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Virginijus, and thank you, Maroš. First, I should apologize, because today we have 3 men on the podium. And in fact, we should have been 6. We should have also welcomed, of course, Kadri Simpson, extremely important for energy. Elisa Ferreira, so important for what will happen, especially in some countries like in Portugal. I will come back on this later on with this. And of course, our EVP and my friend Margaret Vestager, because we are making a lot of things using the right tools. But finally, Maroš, who is leading this opportunity, decided that we will be in this setup. So Maroš, thank you. And next time, of course, hopefully we will have a bit bigger stage. But no, just before to start, and I will switch in French. Je voudrais vraiment dire que hier, au collège, on a un agenda très chargé. Sur cette fin d'année, ça ne vous aura pas échappé. Et c'est la raison du reste pour laquelle on tient cette conférence de presse ce matin. Hier au collège, lorsque on a présenté cette initiative, Maroš, Virginijus et moi-même, la présidente a indiqué, Maroš, que c'était vraiment une initiative flagship de notre politique industrielle. Et je voudrais vraiment d'abord insister là-dessus parce que c'est vraiment, je crois, un cas d'école de ce que nous comptons faire dans notre politique industrielle. D'abord, comme toute politique industrielle, il y a évidemment une inertie, il y a des entreprises, et elle n'a pas démarré aujourd'hui. Et du reste, Maroš Šefčovič, qui est là, est celui qui a initié cette politique, et vraiment, moi je lui rends hommage parce qu'il a fait un travail absolument exceptionnel. D'abord, sous l'ancienne commission, avec Jean-Claude Juncker, c'est lui qui a pris le sujet à bras-le-corps. À l'époque, c'était un peu courageux et visionnaire, Maroš, parce que on voit maintenant évidemment l'importance des batteries, je vais y revenir, mais vraiment, et toutes les entreprises qui sont associées me l'ont dit, c'est vraiment grâce à son énergie qu'on en est là aujourd'hui. Maroš a fait un travail exceptionnel et je suis vraiment très heureux de pouvoir, à ses côtés maintenant, le poursuivre dans la dynamique que je vais indiquer. C'est effectivement un flagship parce que, bon, je l'ai dit, on représente tous les 3 des secteurs importants et Virginijus, là aussi, c'est exceptionnel ce qu'il a apporté, parce que c'est un premier cas d'école extrêmement concret de ce que toute la politique du recycling, de l'économie circulaire, va apporter. Et c'est un cas vraiment concret, et vous allez voir, c'est la première fois qu'on va même tracer maintenant les composants à travers des produits comme la blockchain, je vais y revenir, et le passeport numérique, c'est une première mondiale, et donc de façon à pouvoir précisément suivre la durée de vie de ces batteries, bien sûr quand elles sont en fonctionnement, mais après, et on sait que c'est un problème extrêmement important pour notre environnement. Dernier point, c'est un cas d'école parce qu'il regroupe tout ce que nous apportons les uns et les autres dans la collégialité au sein de la Commission. Travail extrêmement productif, travail totalement coopératif, utilisant les outils des uns et des autres. Je l'ai rappelé tout à l'heure, les outils de la concurrence avec les PIEC. On en a lancé un, c'est Maroš qui a été le premier à le faire. On va en lancer un second, Maroš, dans les jours qui viennent. C'est absolument majeur. C'est des milliards d'investissements. Entre les deux, Maroš, ce sera à peu près entre 30 et 40 milliards qui vont être investis sur ces projets, évidemment public-privé, et je vais y revenir, donc grâce aux outils que Margrethe Vestager a mis à disposition, eh bien, on peut avancer avec les entreprises. C'est aussi, Virginijus l'a rappelé, le plan de relance et avec Frans Timmermans, la nécessité d'utiliser ces fonds précisément pour accompagner la transition verte, et notamment avec le volet recharge qui permet de développer, à travers ce plan, des infrastructures maintenant qui vont couvrir évidemment, on l'espère, le continent européen pour avoir les points de recharge pour les véhicules connectés. C'est aussi, et je vais y revenir avec Nicolas Schmitt, le pacte des compétences, et Nicolas et moi-même, écosystème par écosystème, on revoit avec l'ensemble des acteurs de chaque écosystème donc les compétences qui vont être nécessaires. Et évidemment, dans le monde de l'automobile et des batteries en particulier, il va y avoir beaucoup de reskilling à mettre en œuvre. C'est enfin une approche réglementaire pertinente, qui est une approche réglementaire qui est respectueuse de ce qui est important pour nous, et j'en ai parlé tout à l'heure, l'environnement, entre autres, et l'impact évidemment de la production. On va voir aussi de l'extraction potentiellement, et aussi évidemment de la durée de vie et de l'après-durée de vie de ces batteries. So I would like now to switch in English and to say that, in fact, why is this also a flagship for our industry? Because batteries will be the key element of our digital transition. Of course, it's easy to understand that when we speak about connected vehicle or vehicle, everybody now understands that we will need, one way or the other, the appropriate battery for our electric vehicles. And we know that this is where we go. So everybody has this in mind, and it's true that a lot of efforts have to be made to have a secure battery for this usage, and with a lifetime which will be appropriate for the usage. But it's true also when you see some renewable energies. You need to store this energy somewhere. And this is why you cannot have renewable energies if you don't have also batteries. So that's a direct link. Not exactly the same type of battery, but extremely important. And here also a lot of innovation expected. But it is true also in the digital transition, because of course we know that with IoT we will get processing and information everywhere. But when I say IoT, it means that of course we know that we will have billions of connected objects within the next 5 to 10 years. They will generate data, and the data will be processed locally where they are generated. And guess what? In order to do this, you need electricity. So we will need also the appropriate batteries. Of course, it's not the same one as the one we'll put in the car, but this will be batteries. So, I mean, just to take these 3 examples, this is really why, for us, it is at the heart of our twin transition. But this being said, of course, it's a lot of things that we will have to move. First, and I will speak about this because that's extremely important, reskilling. When we speak about the automotive industry, we know that, of course, building a new car with a battery doesn't require the same skills that making an engine, a turbo engine, not at all. And you need to reskill the people. We know also that we will have a lot of new jobs that we will have to create, probably between 60 to 90,000 new jobs, just for what we plan now with our 2 ICPCI, but indirectly more in the range of 180 to 200. So that's really a very important topic. Last point that I wanted to highlight is that, of course, you know that our industrial strategy is based on green transition, digital transition, and resilience. And it's true, of course, yes, that having now the ability to produce, to build, to design, to have the R&D in Europe for our own usage is definitely part of our resilience. And it's true that today we all know that we are depending a lot from some countries, especially for the lithium. And we know that we are very dependent from Chile, for example. But with Maroš, we made a very big study trying to understand what are the resources that are available in Europe. And we made this presentation a few weeks ago. And now the good news is that we have a lot of resources for critical raw materials in Europe. Not for everything, of course, but for some pretty interesting. And of course, just for lithium, if we find the right approach, the European way, I must say. In other words, being totally respectful of environment, biodiversity, with our own tools. We will be able, we have resources, probably to be, Maroš, but you know this better than me, self-sufficient in few years. So this is a reason why it exists. We can do this. And by the way, we know very well that within the next decades, extractions on the planet will be a key subject. And we have the ability here, again, to be the first one to do it while being very respectful of our values. And the last point I wanted to say, I highlighted this, is that thanks to the very, very hard work that Virginijus made, we have now the vision of the full chain. And of course, we can reuse some components, which is part, of course, also of our resilient part program. But in order to be able to track this, because we have a lot of components here, for the first time, I think ever, we will have this digital passport. This is what we call it. In other words, any battery will have their own digital passport. So we will know every single component, but more important, where they are coming from, what was their life, including before being in the battery. In other words, guess what? This is exactly a very good use of the blockchain, because this is what the blockchain is about, tracking the history of components or parts. We'll be the first one to have this. I just wanted to highlight this. This is why, again, en résumé, eh bien, vous voyez que cette stratégie, c'est vraiment le condensé de tout ce que nous faisons au sein de la Commission pour la stratégie industrielle. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. And with this, we're ready to take your questions. Tom Weingartner first, please.
Yeah, good morning. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I have two questions, please. First, I mean, do you have any quantitative indicator how to distinguish a sustainable battery from a non-sustainable one? I mean, just for example, what would be the difference actually precisely? And what would this mean? Would this mean that unsustainable batteries you cannot bring on the market, or is this a question of labeling also?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think I can start, and I'm sure that my colleagues can complement. And I think, thank you very much for that question, Tom, because I think it's clearly the game changer I was referring to, that how our focus on sustainability is going to distinguish the batteries placed on the European market from any other batteries manufactured elsewhere. What I think would be the major criteria here. The first, it would be carbon footprint of the batteries. How many CO2 emissions be needed for manufacturing the battery. Then, and Thierry was very explicit about the ethical sourcing, where we want to make sure that under this category would fall not only the environmental standards, which, as you know, are very, very high in Europe, but also social standards, labor standards, child rights, human rights, and all these things which have been actually quite well developed by the OECD under the umbrella of the due diligence of these products, but we are really putting them in place. And then, of course, it would be recycled content, and Virginijus was extremely careful to make sure that this is very well anchored in this regulation, and it would also, I would say, allow us to develop completely new industry on recycling the materials and critical raw materials which we need in Europe. So with all this, and also thanks to the digital passport, the consumer will know what they are buying. So they will know how sustainable the battery is, how the standards been respected, what is the carbon footprint. And therefore, I believe that we are kind of moving from price-only criterion and we are moving to that sustainability criteria, which would be extremely important, and I'm sure especially for the new generation, which is so conscious of environment. And I think it would be also very important for the green procurement we are introducing by boosting our clear determination to be climate neutral by 2050, where all public authorities, public bodies should take into due account the sustainability of the product, sustainability of the cars, carbon footprint, and all the environmental standards when they would be procuring, for example, electric vehicles. So I believe that with that list of requirements for the batteries which would be placed on the European market, we are really creating this global golden standard for batteries, which I'm sure will be embraced by other major economies, because clearly here we are aiming at setting the highest standard of the best quality. Thank you. I don't know, colleagues, if you would like to add, Virginijus.
I would say that it was very well put by the Vice President Šefčovič. I would just take it from the last bit that this, of course, would be applied to batteries produced domestically in the EU market and also imported batteries. But most importantly, of course, is labeling, involving consumers to make choices. Of course, carbon footprint threshold is going to play a vital role, and in the end, recycled content, which will be part of the batteries produced.
And just as a conclusion, for what just Virginijus said, this is an extremely important point. The batteries that which will be sold on the internal market will have to fulfill with these requirements, including the one which could be imported from old European friends or partners, still friends but partners.
Thank you. So next we'll go to David Abiago.
Carbon footprint. So my question is, it's a declaration or is it a threshold? Because I heard the word threshold. Do batteries have to reach a certain carbon footprint threshold? And then the second part of the question is, yesterday we had this sustainable mobility package. This carbon footprint, how will that be used? Can that be used to, say, calculate the life cycle emissions, CO2 emissions of cars? Because EVs perhaps have a higher CO2 emission than normal internal combustion engines. Will that be eventually used in some other way?
You don't need to push. Just speak.
Thank you very much, David, for that question. And I already heard how Virginijus now to respond very eloquently to the comparison of combustion engines and electric vehicles. So I will leave this part to him. Only on the carbon footprint, just to make it very clear that once this regulation is adopted and enters into force, the first what we would need would be the measurement of the carbon footprint, so the declaration. Then based on that declaration, we would 2 years later place the batteries to different categories. And I know just as an easy comparison, today where you buy a fridge or washing machine, you already have the categories, how energy efficient these products are. So it would be something similar with the batteries. But as of 2027, we really want, based on the performance of the manufacturers in reducing the carbon footprint, to set the firm maximum threshold. So that would be gradual, incremental approach, which I'm sure will bring us to the most performant batteries with the lowest carbon footprint. And of course, as you probably noted in my introductory remarks, but you will see it also in the regulations, we will be working with the authorities and the bodies who have a lot of experience in measuring the different elements and standards in the cars, like, for example, TÜV in Germany, and I know that we have more authorities and companies which are doing this due diligence work, and I'm sure that also NGOs will be very vigilant to make sure that all the declarations and measurements are absolutely precise, and so will the Commission. So I think that we will have it under very solid control to make sure that it will be working with very, very solid data.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Maybe answering on the combustion engines, on electric vehicles in general. So, just not to be confused, this legislation is not about the combustion engines or car emissions as per se. Of course, that's going to contribute. But this legislation is sort of our guide towards sustainable batteries, as introduced by Vice President, also by Commissioner Breton. There is going to be exponential growth of batteries. And this legislation covers not only EV batteries, but all batteries landed on and sold on the EU market. And therefore, this is the tool for making sure that they are produced sustainably, used longer, and then, of course, those valuable resources extracted and put back into economy. This is the main goal. Of course, that's going to contribute heavily to our CO2 emissions goals, but the major purpose is not that.
And just to highlight what Maroš Šefčovič just said, then we will have many batteries, including, for example, give you another example, in data centers. Of course, we know that we will have to store more and more data. We need to have also robustness of production. If there is a problem, we can have, also, of course, some specific backup tools, but also batteries. And believe me, there are huge batteries. And this is why we are focusing, as just Virginijus said, here on the battery itself. And by the way, since you mentioned this, Virginijus, for the car, specifically for the car, yes, we are working on CO2 emission this is with Franz Timmermans, of course, and myself, I'm in charge of looking at car pollutant emissions like NOx, but that's a different subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Angelo Di Mambro.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for this press conference. Angelo Di Mambro from ANSA News Agency. I would have two questions, if I may. The first one, I've seen requirements for recycling, for carbon footprint. I could not find any to ensure the long lifetime of batteries. Is there any requirement on that? And the second question, the Commissioner Breton mentioned the project of common interest. One has been approved already, been approved already, but another one should be upcoming. And I would like to know the state of the play, when it will be unveiled, and what are the member states, the member states involved in this second project of common interest. Thank you.
So to answer to Angelo, you will see in that regulation that there are clear requirements if it comes to reuse and the repurposing of the battery. So we are really covering the whole life cycle of the batteries, and this, I believe, will definitely help to reduce further the CO2 emissions of the electric vehicles. And maybe also to elaborate a little bit on the previous questions, I came across the recent studies, which of course will be very happy to share with you, which clearly show that electric vehicles, even from the powered by the energies where still there is high content of coals, are much cleaner, with clearly lowest emission emissions of CO2 than combustion engines. And as you know, I was responsible for Energy Union before, so I know that by 2030 we expect that at least 70% of our electricity in the grids would be low carbon. So I think this would come at the same moment where we would have a very significant proportion of our vehicles on the road powered by batteries, by electricity, and also our energy mix would be very much different than what we have right now. So I think we are going in the right way, and we would need all that efforts and all that positive impact on the environment if we want to be climate neutral by 2050, because the transport has to contribute by 90% of the reduction. So we need all good and available technologies to get us there. And on the project of the common interest, I think Thierry was responding to that very eloquently at the beginning. Now we are really in a final lap. We are finalizing the second IPCEI. I very much appreciate the hard work of Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager on this issue, because this time we are talking about the more countries participating. In the first IPCEI, if I remember correctly, there were 7 countries, around 15 companies. Now we are talking about 12 member states plus 2 member states as observers in this consortium, and we are talking roughly about 45 companies. So it's enormous work, and therefore I know that our colleagues in DG Competition and DG Grow are doing their utmost to complete their work before the end of the year, so we can come to the announcement sometime early next year. But of course the final touches and the final steps are always the most difficult, but I think we are on a good way to announce it early next year, and I think it would be another catalyst, another boost to this very progressive battery sector in Europe. Thank you.
So maybe returning to question, thank you very much for a question on requirement for long lifetime. So here probably what wasn't mentioned quite often enough, that this initiative today is the first one under the Circular Economy Action Plan. And Circular Economy Action Plan itself is of course about longer lifetime of certain appliances. Today we start with the batteries, and there of course will be performance and durability requirements. Secondly, of course, we're speaking about the second life, about extracting and those valuable resources, and of course the end of life of batteries. Last but not least, I think consumers, what our experience from the past with eco-design labeling shows, that they also do their jobs by choosing products that last longer, that is going to help them save money, and of course products that have a longer life cycle.
For the ICPCI, I think Maroš said everything, and is right in the very strong appetite and the number of member states who notified their interest. So as you see, it's bigger than the first one, but that's under evaluation, and so this is really something that we cannot speak now, because of course the evaluation is going on. But I just wanted to remind that with these alliances and this ICPCI, we are these tools have been created, and Margrethe Vestager is very keen on this, to use again, to be able to have public and private investment for development, R&D, and you see that for batteries we have a lot of development and R&D, and so we have to be careful that this amount will be rightly focused to fit with the ICPCI tools. But these alliances are extremely important. As you know, we have other alliances, including in raw materials, including, as you know, in microprocessors and clouds. And then, of course, the investigation is now being finalized by the services, but I think Maroš is right. Hopefully we could have an answer, but you could ask Margrethe Vestager, because I think we will be both on stage next week, so maybe you could ask her if she could give you an idea when it will be released, probably early next year. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll have time for one more question. Anna Hubert, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, très bien.
Oui. J'ai une question sur une double question. D'abord sur la date de 2027 pour fixer le seuil maximum d'empreinte pour l'empreinte carbone. Ça me paraît assez tard. Qu'est-ce qui justifie une telle date très proche d'ailleurs de 2030 et l'objectif climat? Est-ce que ça n'intervient pas un peu tard? Et ma deuxième question, c'est sur l'outil utilisé, donc un règlement plutôt que la directive. Quelle est la logique derrière ce changement d'outil? Est-ce que justement vous avez constaté que peut-être les États membres prenaient trop de liberté avec les quelques règles de la directive de 2006? Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for both questions. The first one, I think that what we are accomplishing here is actually extremely fast, and we've been, of course, looking at it from all angles, and I can guarantee you that the proposal which is today on the table is the most ambitious worldwide. Therefore, I called it the gold standard for the sustainable, safe, green batteries. And why we decided to go at this stage approach, because this is really the new sector, new technology which is being developed, and we see how also the competition among the different technological solutions is evolving. And therefore, once this regulation is put in place, we want to have the first very thorough look what is the carbon footprint of the batteries placed on the EU market. We of course will assess them, and we will use not only our Commission services but also third-party verification bodies, which, as you know, have very often very high respect, especially from the consumer associations, and they really do a very good job. And then we will, based on this carbon footprint and all that verification which will be done, we will place them in the different categories. So the consumers would have a choice. Do I want the car with A plus battery or a car with a B battery? And I think it would also increase the competition in lowering the carbon footprint. And I think at that time, I believe that we will have enough information for the mature decision to set the standards for the maximum level of the CO2 for the carbon footprint in the batteries. So this is what I think is good legislating, because we will be legislating on the real thing, on the real results, with, I would say, very strong incentives to perform better, to demonstrate the sustainability of the batteries, and also to give the consumers enormous oversight and power to decide what kind of quality, what kind of carbon footprint battery they want to have in their cars. And I believe that also that the green procurement I was referring to earlier on will really change the market quite significantly. Just think, you know, how many vehicles the post in France or post in Germany has, or water utilities companies, or I would say, you know, the governments which are procuring them for their purposes. So I think this would really bring totally new dynamics to the market, and I believe that combination of this new way how to procure, plus this very diligent way how we would measure carbon footprint, increase the competition among the manufacturers, researchers, and then setting the firm maximum limit for the carbon footprint for the battery is a good one. We had with my colleagues long discussions on this, and after very, very thorough reflection, we concluded that this is the best way forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mais peut-être juste un point sur la dernière question, parce que c'est important. Pourquoi un règlement plutôt qu'une directive? C'est une question très importante, parce qu'elle est vraiment associée au marché intérieur. Si vous regardez au cours des dernières années, à chaque fois quand il s'agit de produits, on favorise plutôt le règlement, parce qu'encore une fois, c'est un instrument législatif qui permet d'avoir une meilleure intégrité et harmonisation du marché intérieur. Donc évidemment, c'est pour ça qu'on le privilégie. Au-delà du fait, évidemment, que c'est un instrument qui permet d'être plus rapidement mis en œuvre une fois qu'il a été évidemment adopté par nos organes législatifs. C'est aussi, et j'insiste là-dessus, pourquoi au marché intérieur on favorise aussi ce type d'instrument, au-delà de l'harmonisation, c'est parce qu'il nous permet d'avoir tout de suite des normes identiques, sans qu'elles soient négociées à la marge, en matière de sécurité. Or, les batteries, on l'a dit tout à l'heure, il y a aussi évidemment, derrière tout ça, un élément de sécurité qui est important, et donc il faut qu'on ait vraiment une harmonisation. Et j'ajouterai enfin que, vous savez qu'on organise désormais le marché intérieur par écosystème, et un écosystème, par définition, il est totalement intégré sur le marché intérieur. Ça s'applique évidemment à l'ensemble de l'écosystème mobilité, mais on le voit aussi au numérique. Donc tous ces écosystèmes sont impactés, donc il vaut mieux, évidemment, pouvoir les adresser en même temps. Voilà la raison pour laquelle on a privilégié cet outil.
Merci beaucoup. If you allow me, there's a lot of demand, so one quick last question and then we go. Derek, s'il te plaît.
C'est une question pour le commissaire Thierry Breton. Vous avez évoqué tout à l'heure le fait qu'une batterie qui viendrait d'un pays tiers et ne respecterait pas les règles européennes ne pourrait pas être sur le marché européen. Est-ce qu'on sera vraiment dans une interdiction totale? Est-ce que vous pouvez confirmer ça et qu'on n'est pas dans une logique de taxe carbone où elles seront soumises à des taxes supplémentaires? Et est-ce que là aussi, c'est une obligation qui n'entrera en vigueur qu'en 2027? Et donc, d'ici là, les batteries asiatiques pourront continuer à alimenter le marché européen. Merci.
C'est une interdiction. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup. Voilà. Thank you so much for having been here. Thank you for joining us and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.